All right, welcome back to the Plant-Based Fitness Secrets podcast. Today we have a special guest joining us on the show, tuning in from, I think, New York. Am I
New
right?
York. Yep.
Awesome. We have Sam joining us today, one of our superstar clients and members who's been crushing her journey. And I do love these because there's so many people from all walks of life that have one similar goal, one similar vision. It is to fulfill their true potential and get their health to the next level. And I think you've had a pretty interesting and inspiring journey. So thanks for joining us today, Sam. And how are you today?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. I know I've told you this before, but your podcast has been incredibly influential in my life in the past 4 months. And like I've told you this too, but I have a ritual where every Sunday I go to the sauna and I plug in through an auxiliary cable my phone so I can listen to your podcast. And it's just like one of my most favorite hours of the week to listen to other game changers' stories and to consume your content while just sort of resetting for the week. So I'm so psyched to be here.
That's awesome. That's full circle right there. It's
Totally.
amazing. How long have you been listening to the podcast?
So I can tell you really specifically in a bizarre way how specific it is. It's been about 4 months. And I know because I was driving my son home from a bar mitzvah in New York City, and I was listening to your podcast when you were on Simon Hill's podcast, The Proof, and something just completely connected for me around this idea of being able to be a very fit vegan with a specific goal around consuming a more high protein diet. It had just felt like a missing piece for me in my interest in becoming vegan. And so once I heard your story and your story about transformation and the work you do with your clients, I just was so excited. So that started my sort of micro journey with you and your team. But of course, my health and fitness journey has been going on for, my whole 45 years.
Yes, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, Simon Hill's episode is I always look back at it as well, and so grateful I was able to get to share my journey and some of my tips and wisdom. But let's talk about you. So a little bit about you, maybe a background, just to start off with.
Sure.
So where you from, and what's your kind of day-to-day life like, and what's your plant-based story or journey? What made you make a
Yeah.
switch?
So the plant-based story is a fun one. I'm excited to kind of get into it because it's been circuitous. But I'm 45. I live just outside New York. I work in healthcare and I work both in Westchester where I live, but also in New York City. And I have a busy, full, rich, wonderful life. I have two children, a husband, a French bulldog, a career that I love, friendships, family, and fitness. So I have kind of an interesting path to being vegan. I've actually only been vegan, Fritz, for the past 3 months.
Hmm.
But the story, goes way back to when I was 10, I became vegetarian. At that time in my house, we had quite a number of animals. I think at our max, we had about 18 pets. My mom was sort of a
Wow.
Dr. Dolittle, just actually truly loved animals more than humans. And so stocked our house full. We had birds, we had dogs, we raised dogs for guiding eyes for the blind. We had cats, we had it all. And so from a young age, we were really taught to love, care, respect for animals. And when I was about 10, my mom became a vegetarian. And this is way pre-internet. And so she had sort of sent away from, or at least was collecting, let's call it propaganda, sort of anti-factory farming flyers. And I was a pretty precocious 10-year-old. And I remember kind of snooping through her stuff, which I liked to do, and found these pamphlets. and saw things that I could not unsee at age 10, and just kind of came across this concept of factory farming, which at that age was completely, I had been shielded from it, right? And so in our house, we were omnivores. But from that point forward, she changed her diet and became a vegetarian, and I quickly followed suit. And she was supportive of that. And we essentially had two dietary patterns coexisting in our house. We had the sort of omnivores, and we had the two of us. And for many, many years, I ate a vegetarian diet. And then as I got older and into my 20s, I started adding seafood. I was thinking more about protein. I actually quite liked eating salmon and shrimp in particular. And so I would consider myself a pescatarian for about 20 years. And then I had an experience in 2018 where I joined a CrossFit gym, totally newbie CrossFitter.
Wow.
I participated in this lifestyle challenge that they did where we were trying to really drop fat and add muscle. And to do so, I worked with a coach to work on macros, which was a concept I had never heard of. And she jacked up my protein. And at that time, it was such a wide gap between what I had been eating as mostly a vegetarian. And then I had this pretty extreme protein target. And I was like, how am I going to reach that? And so I started eating a lot of cottage cheese, a lot of shrimp, a lot of salmon, a lot of Greek yogurt, a lot of eggs. And I was able to see a real transformation. And so that was kind of my first learning about the importance of protein. Fast forward to the Game Changers. When did that come out? Do you remember the documentary?
2017, I think. 2017,
Okay.
2018.
Okay. I think I watched it right around the time I was doing CrossFit. And I remember, again, kind of one of these light bulb moments where I was like, I didn't know this was a thing, that you could be super, super fit and also be vegan. Because I've always sort of been curious about being vegan, but have just talked myself out of it, thinking it would be too complicated, or that it would be socially challenging for other people in my life, or that I couldn't source my protein that way. And when I saw Game Changers, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to give this thing a go. So I did sort of a phase of being vegan, and I bought, I think there's this guy, Robert Cheek, like this cookbook that was like the no meat athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember trying to make those recipes, and they were so high in carbohydrates, so many beans and lentils and things that you talk a lot about on the podcast. And I remember just feeling like this can't be it. Like there just wasn't a lot of protein in the recipes. They were delicious, but incredibly calorically dense. And so I gave it a go for a couple of months, and I was like, I think I got to cycle back to kind of incorporating dairy. So anyway, that was sort of how I was approaching things in this like cyclical way, I would say. And then
Mm-hmm.
lastly, and then we'll kind of land this plane, I started working with a bodybuilding coach last fall. This was after reading Peter Attia's book, Outlive, watching a lot of Netflix documentaries, consuming a lot of content about growing muscle and the importance of doing it in midlife and as we age. And I just was so determined that I wanted to change up my fitness routine and my training, and I really wanted to focus on building muscle. So I started working with a female bodybuilding coach who taught me a tremendous amount about concepts like progressive overload and how to build a strength training routine. I joined a gym. I just took a lot of action over the course of 4 or 6 months. But again, this protein question kept coming up, and she gave me a pretty aggressive protein target to hit. And so I went back to what I knew. I went back to that CrossFit era where I was eating those foods I mentioned. And then I just kept feeling this sinking feeling of being so out of line with kind of where I started this whole journey when I was 10, around like compassion and respect for animals. And I was having a lot of judgments of myself, like, this is so selfish. Like, I'm so focused on my personal well-being and growing muscle. And it really felt out like at the expense of fish and dairy and all these industries that I otherwise would not want to be propping up. And I was continuing to understand kind of what a vegan diet could look like. I had just watched the Netflix documentary that came out about the twin study where they had one vegan twin
Hmm.
and one omnivore twin. I think it's Chris Gardner's work from Stanford. And again, just sort of this concept kept recurring like, okay, you can build muscle and be a vegan. And then finally, I heard your podcast on Simon Hill, and it just felt like, okay, I got to give this thing a shot. I really need to understand how to put these pieces together, how to try to live in a more aligned way with the things that I care about, but also hopefully not sacrifice the gains and the progress in the gym that I was
Mm.
trying to make.
Yes. Well, that's a great breakdown. I think you kind of encompass one of the big problems a lot of people face in our community, in the kind of vegan community is, okay, I want to be healthy in a vegan diet, but I'm really struggling to get my protein in without using chicken and dairy. And it's really unfortunate because it can be done and can be fixed. And no, it's not only tofu. There's
Exactly.
more.
Yep.
There's more, which that's what when I went vegan, I was so fed up with all the lentils and tofu all the time. So I made my own pain kind of the solution as well and came up with all these amazing recipes inside the program. But going back to your journey, so you watched all these documentaries, realized it is possible, and then you decided to go on a journey, on a vegan journey to gain muscle. So was kind of muscle gain always a goal for you? Was it always kind of a challenge for you
Yeah.
to develop
Yeah.
muscle mass?
Yes, it's always been a challenge. I would say I've been a very fit, active person my entire life. I've never struggled with being overweight. However, I would say, about a year ago, I was starting to feel a little skinny fat, which is a funny phrase that I think I learned from you. But I was doing the kinds of movement, Pilates, yoga, Peloton, low impact bike riding, gentle hiking,
Mm,
low resistance, things that I really enjoyed doing and that felt nice to my body and sort of fueled my story of like, I'm an active person. But what was always kind of missing, I think, other than that CrossFit year, was pushing weights and intensity. So, whereas I had developed a very consistent, highly disciplined workout routine, I did not have heavy weights in my life and I did not have intensity. And Peter Attia's book really helped to kind of shift my thinking on that. And actually, it was reading his book that led me to get a DEXA scan. And when I got a DEXA scan and saw what was actually going on inside of my body, I was kind of floored because my body fat was higher than I thought it would be. And my bone density was lower than I thought it would be. And it felt like
mm,
one of these like micro aha moments where I was like, okay, I got to
mhm.
pick up heavier weights. I'm pretty good at asking for help. So that's when I hired a bodybuilding coach and I started working with a trainer just on form and really wanting to make sure I was going to kind of
Mm.
put this investment in place where I could then be lifting weights for the rest of my life. So it's very much changed the kind of movement that I do. So I primarily only at this point lift weights and walk and hike and occasionally do yoga. So it's like kind of completely transformed the sort of movement that I do in the past year. And just a cool follow up, I just got a DEXA scan this past week, so it's a year later, and my body fat percentage has dropped almost 10 points, and I've gained 6 pounds of muscle. So just
Wow.
really cool markers. I'm super not done yet. I have a lot of goals I still want to hit, but just seeing the progress in a year's time was incredibly encouraging.
Wow. That's great that you did the DEXA scan. Um, because I wish more people would do that. I think the body weight scale obviously is one measurement, but having a full-on DEXA scan, it shows you the truth. Like you said, you're looking at the truth in the eye. That's your body composition with all its flaws and areas of improvements are also great things. Fun kind of side fact, when I did my last DEXA scan, they found out that my left bicep is actually bigger than my right one,
Uh,
which is weird because I'm right-handed. So
mhm.
been introducing more. trying to balance it out more and choosing more right hand curls, which is a bit of a side fact. But actually, I'm reading the book right now, which is funny. I'm having it's laying right there on my bed table.
Outlive?
And yeah, Outlive from Peter Attia, exactly. I'm not that far yet. I'm only like one quarter maybe, but
Well,
it's been great.
pro tip, download the audiobook too, because you can
Mhm.
walk and listen to that. And then you can kind of go back and forth between the hard copy and listening to it. It's just such a bear of a book that I found I was
Yeah,
not moving through it until I got the audio. And then I was finding a lot of good kind of synergy between the two.
that's awesome. Yeah, I love audiobooks. I'm obsessed with them. So, all right, so you touched on a lot of great things. So you saw you need to gain muscle, and I love that you took action right away. Like you seek help because yeah, a lot of people they have the knowledge, right? And one of my mentors taught me if you read about something or you learn something, but then you don't change your behavior, you didn't truly learn something. Like you did not learn. That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah.
But you took action, which I really admire, and got yourself some help. So, how did you find the first call with us, the consultation?
So it's funny because I have heard so many game changer stories. Honestly, I've consumed so many episodes of your podcast. I'll tell you actually why I've listened to so many of them. I think it's because, well, first of all, it's just inspiring to hear people's stories. But also, I don't actually have any vegans in my life. And so being able to have this kind of virtual community and hearing that we're all on a similar journey, kind of solving a lot of the same problems, inspired by the same goals, has been incredibly helpful to me. So that I just wanted to mention that. But in the stories that other people have told, I recognize that my story was pretty different in that I was already pretty far along kind of my journey in the past year. I was very
Mm,
committed, I was very motivated. So I think when I got on the phone with you, I basically like sold myself to the program where I was like, just take me, I'm ready, let's do it.
that's true.
So there was not a lot of like resistance or barriers to overcome. I think it maybe is hopefully for you a pretty easy call because I think I was just so excited about the prospect of working with somebody who was going to help me learn what I wanted to learn very quickly.
Mhm.
And I just love learning and absorbing new information. I think it was Maya Angelou who said, you know, when we know better, we can do better. And I've just always lived
Mm,
by that principle. Like when I know better, I am very quick to act and I love experimentation. I will try things and I will see if they resonate for me and work for me. And if not, I'll tweak and adjust. It's just been an incredibly valuable kind of mindset in my life.
beautiful. It was a very straightforward call. I agree. Yeah, I remember that. So I like that because you've watched all the podcasts, you've listened to the podcast. So like I have nothing to hide. That's who we are. Put myself out there every day. And I like that. So your goal coming in was what was your exact goal when you came in to the program?
So I, first of all, wanted to maintain the progress that I had built in the gym. I was a little afraid of kind of taking a step back when I switched protein sources overnight. So I wanted to maintain, but then ultimately I wanted to grow. I just wanted to keep building muscle. And very specifically, I wanted to understand how do you source protein? What are those recipes? What are the portion sizes? What will that do to my macros? How do I prep it in advance? And then kind of how do I merge this new cuisine with my family life? So I had a lot of questions I wanted help answering. And so being able to get a meal plan, which actually full disclosure, I don't follow and I didn't follow. But what I wanted to do was to be able to see how recipes were assembled. And I wanted to be able to understand portion size. And I wanted to be able to see kind of how a day would be laid out so that I could extract kind of the principles and the concepts behind that and merge
Mhm.
it into the way I already food prep, the way I already cook, so that I didn't overwhelm myself and feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do this whole specific plan just for myself and then kind of take care of my family separately. I knew that for this to be
Mhm.
sustainable, I had to be able to merge kind of how you guys do things with how I do things. And so I've sort of
Mhm.
studied the recipes and figured out the protein component, and then also did a lot of tinkering with the grocery stores in my areas to figure out like who sources what things. And it's been a really fun discovery process of all kinds of protein sources that I did not know before. For example,
Mm.
making on myself, which I've never done. I've also found this really wonderful product that's a soy-free tofu that's made from like compressed fava beans that has wonderful macros. I
Mm.
found some people on YouTube that have helped kind of incorporate what I've been learning from you guys. So it's just been a phase, I would say, of like rapid absorption and
Mhm.
tinkering.
I love how you went in and you were like, I'm not following the meal plan.
Full disclosure.
This is the first time I'm hearing this.
Sorry, should have told you in
All
advance.
good. No, no worries. Well, so when did you realize then that this diet and program works?
Kind of right away, I would say in the first couple of weeks, I felt great. And I don't think my body was having like a negative reaction to the dairy I was consuming and the fish. But by contrast, just being on a completely plant-based diet felt really good right away. It also just felt really good in terms of my mindset and that sense of
Mhm.
alignment and synchrony, like, oh wow, okay, I'm doing what I say is important for me to do. And that sort of alignment or integrity just it feels really, really good internally. So I felt good physically, I felt good kind of spiritually. And then I started to feel more capable probably by week 3 of prepping proteins. The first couple of weeks, I was just learning a lot, like what
Mhm.
is done. I literally didn't know. What are the macros in tofu? What does tempeh taste like? How do you get rid of certain characteristics of the tempeh kind of
Mhm.
taste that takes some getting used to? Um, but I noticed also I was coming out of a fat loss phase. And so I was starting to incorporate more calories and more carbohydrates. And being able to do that on a plant-based diet just started to feel really good. And so within the span of, I would say, 8 weeks, not only was I not feeling like I took a step back by being vegan, I felt like I was accomplishing things in the gym that I hadn't yet done. So the progression was pretty fast. And to be fair, I think I was ready to make that change, but it was so important to learn that I wasn't going to sacrifice or take a step back from like the gains that I had been making on a pescatarian diet.
So you would say that the gains happen like even better or at least the same since switching to fully plant-based.
100%. Yep.
And with the alignment being there now, it feels better because yeah, you mean you and I know when we wake up every morning and we lie to ourselves maybe a little bit, like we forego our true values in certain ways. Obviously that doesn't feel good and it probably has an effect on our cortisol levels, our stress levels, and just general we don't maybe even feel that safe or confident within ourselves. At least that's how I felt. I mean, I can share that when I first, for me in a different way, when I first went plant-based, I put on a lot of weight and I felt like a hypocrite, right? So for me, I was kind of preaching a lifestyle, but then not looking the part myself. And it just eats away at you over time when you're not fully aligned with your values. So I totally see that. So you're saying that just for the listener as well. So your goal was to gain muscle, get stronger. You just came out of a fat loss phase, and then you're able to eat more food. But don't you gain a lot of fats when you eat more food and more carbs?
Oh, this question. Um, so no. And the reason for this, and you guys talk a lot about this in the podcast and for us with as clients, um, I've done a lot of work over months to recomposition my body. And through the process of gaining muscle, my metabolism has adapted to the calories that I'm taking in. And so with coaching, I have figured out how to kind of slowly introduce new calories every week and just to kind of get that feedback in the gym, on the scale, kind of in photos that my body's making really good use of this fuel. And that's such a cool, beautiful process to be part of, to realize that your body, I'm 45 and I lead a mostly sedentary life in terms of my work, to see that my body can continue to adapt and grow and use the fuel that I'm giving it in ways that then support my muscle building goals has just been like revelatory. I know I've heard this from other people. I know I've seen it in documentaries. I know I've sort of had the abstract knowledge, but when it has been my lived experience, it's just been a very cool process.
Super cool, right? Like food becomes something exciting, something that we are not afraid of, and that helps us build our body, our health.
I
So
will like,
tell me
can I just
more.
amend one
Yeah.
thing? I do think as an American woman, getting on a scale and seeing it go up
Hmm.
takes a little getting used to. That has been a challenge. I think even though I know what my goals are and I know that in order to get stronger, I need to put on more muscle, that implies a scale weight needs to
Hmm.
go up. And that, as a person growing up in this culture, that is anathema to the sort of messaging around like shrink, you know?
Hmm.
And when I think about the women whose bodies I've been really inspired by, they are all incredibly strong and they weigh a certain amount of weight on the scale. And so every week, kind of watching the weight go up, again, not massive leaps and bounds, but little bits at a time, I've had to really rely heavily on my coach, Marta, and my own self-talk to just really reframe that. Like, this is the goal. This is my body is doing what I'm asking it to do. And that takes some getting used to.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for saying that. This is actually a good point. And it's easy to say, yeah, just focus on like it's gonna be fine, it's muscle gain. But then when the number goes up, it definitely it's so heavily ingrained in the culture, right? What I find interesting is for a lot of people, the inspiration on social media, for a lot of these women, mm, I think most don't share their weight too much, right? But then like the weight doesn't really matter. Like you look at her, you're like, wow, she looks incredible. But you don't go and like comment under her under her post. How much do you actually weigh? Because it doesn't matter in the end, right? If it's 110, 130 pounds, 132. Um, but it is a process. So I thank you for acknowledging that. I think that's our goal with our members is like the dieting, that's the first piece, like losing the fat. It is the biggest transformation mentally to get rid of body fat. But then even the bigger transformation is to go into reverse dieting, to add calories to your diet. And but once you complete that mental transformation and physical transformation, then you truly have cracked the box of Pandora, right? You can flick away everything else because you have eaten more and still look great and felt great. And you know why. So it is a journey, but once you've gone on it, it's like you said, it's a beautiful experience. So on that lifestyle piece, because you mentioned obviously you have family, you have uh, a work schedule that's obviously full as well, on the go probably a lot. So how do you do it? How it's an open-ended question. It's a loaded question. Okay, let me ask you, What has been one thing that has been really helpful for you to make everything work?
Okay, hard question, good question. Um, so I would say one of my strengths is discipline and consistency. So that has been really, really helpful as I make room in my schedule for the things that matter to me. I work out really, really early in the morning, and that that comes with a trade-off, right? It means that I go to bed really early. It means that I say no to going out to certain things at night. Um, it means I don't watch a lot of TV and know a lot of references about what's going on in the world, which is I'm okay with that trade-off. But it means that I really stack my mornings in a way that feels to me like powerful and intentional, where I get my workout in and I can come home and care for my kids and make them a healthy, nutritious breakfast, launch them to school, and then start my own work day. So having kind of anchor habits, I think, has been very, very helpful in starting my day in a way that feels powerful to me. And I would say like a tactic that's very helpful is I meal prep throughout my weekend. So I am often home with my kids around mealtime, and so I'll just throw some, marinated tofu in the air fryer while I'm doing something else. So I call these like meanwhile behaviors. It's like you can meal prep while you're doing something else. So if I'm folding laundry, I can also be roasting a sheet of vegetables, and I can portion that into Tupperwares that then become like lunches for the next few days. So I do invest in both the money of, eating healthy food. I spend time in grocery stores, kind of sourcing the products I like. In the summers here, I'll go to farmers markets. So I'm willing to spend time and money to go do the things that then set me up through the week to be
Mm,
successful. So that I'm not, starving and looking for food. The community that I live in doesn't have a lot of vegan restaurant options. So I bring my food with me every day for breakfast and lunch. And then at home, we come together and eat a largely plant-based meal that, sometimes we're cooking it at that moment. And other times it's been prepped in advance, or we rely on like pre-cut vegetables or frozen vegetables or just sort of hacks, right, to make it possible.
mhm,
But look, it's honestly, it requires intentionality, it requires planning, it requires discipline, it requires consistency. But I think if you do an inventory around like what really matters to you, what are you willing to trade off? I'm willing to trade off like late nights watching Netflix and missing cultural references. Um, I'm willing to spend the time and the money. I know not everybody can. I know not everybody wants to, but I think I drank the Kool-Aid in terms of kind of health span, and I'm trying to live
mhm,
not necessarily as long as humanly possible. I'm not interested in like, just living a long life for the sake of it. I really want to live a, a well-lived life. I want to be
mm.
healthy, strong, and do my centenarian decathlon that Peter Attia talks about, and go the distance. And I realize that what I do today has implications for how that goes 10 years from now and 20 years from now. And so, whereas in my 20s, I might have been solely motivated by more like aesthetic goals. I
Mhm.
still have aesthetic goals for sure, but they're really accompanied by the bigger picture at this point.
Amazing. Yeah, why not? I mean, let's do a podcast in 80 years' time. You being 125, I'll be hitting the 100 years as well. We'll do a follow-up episode.
You talk
But I
about
think I like
your
it.
balanced biceps at that point.
Exactly, exactly. But I think, yeah, you are making a great point. It is, let's just say it how it is. I mean, you need to make a choice, right? You need to make a commitment, and it's a lifestyle change. So if you want to lose weight now, but also keep it off and be healthy for your whole life, it is more so saying no to certain things most of the time, right? Not all the time. So the goal is, and now you're in evolution phase two, the goal is to learn intuitive eating, right? To learn how to make this more of a intuitive lifestyle without having to weigh everything, track everything constantly. So there's skill development along the way. You're not stuck in diets or macro counting forever, right? But still, it's a lifestyle change. So it is a decision you got to make. And like you say, it's opportunity cost in the end. So yeah, I like that. So would you say that has it been a sustainable change for you?
For sure, yes. And I think in part that's because um, of the kind of consistent work that I'm putting into the meal prep piece and the training schedule. So carving out and protecting that time has been really important and really helpful. And I can sort of see that it's all doable, it's all manageable, it's all workable with the protection in my schedule. It wouldn't be if I just sort of woke up and kind of went through the day in a haphazard way. But because I've protected times in my schedule where I know I can grocery shop or meal prep or work out or whatnot, that really helps to know that this is sustainable. I will say one of my goals for the next year, because I've just re-upped for the evolution program, is to really figure out the traveling piece. My family loves to travel. We love adventure and trying new foods and new places. And the world is very uneven when it comes to its embrace of veganism. And some communities are much easier to travel to and just be able to kind of land and consume the beautiful local bounty and have that be consistent with veganism. And other places are really hard. And so I am working with Marta to try to figure out like what are the ways to travel as a high protein vegan and continue to meet my fitness goals. That's a bigger long-term goal that's going to require a lot of experimentation. And I definitely want to move into intuitive eating so that when I'm traveling too, I'm not burdened by kind of thinking about where am I in my kind of macro
Mhm.
tracking. But look, macro tracking has really had a place for me in the past 6 months. I've learned a tremendous amount. It has made me much more mindful of what I consume, how I combine foods, how I pace my food throughout the day. Like it's a tool. I know you talk about that a lot on the podcast. It's a tool. It's like training wheels. It's very, very helpful and effective, but it's also not a long-term way to live, in my opinion. I know some bodybuilders do it forever and other people do it forever, and it can be, maybe comforting in that way. But I would like to get off of that and be able to have the confidence and the sense that I can sustain these principles that are really important to me and be able to kind of move throughout the world in other people's houses or traveling and have a sense that I can take care of myself and meet those needs.
Mhm. Yes, beautiful. Yeah, it really demystifies nutrition and helps you navigate through the kind of new fad diets or things you see online, and you can just break it down to macros and then look at it with a very clear view. If you see a protein rich bar in your Whole Foods, and then you look at the bag, it's 10 grams. You're like, this is not a protein bar. So you're really confident with your knowledge there. Um, do you still have a few minutes just checking? Because I know we're running a bit over. I think I still have a few questions for you if you still
Sure.
have time for me.
Hit me up. Go for it.
Um, just quick ones. We can do it on quick fire. So, how do people around you react to your transformation?
So, mostly very, very positively. I think because I'm excited and I feel inspired, that energy, I think people just respect it and are happy for me. I do think there is a little bit of resistance around the veganism piece in some of my family members, where the fear, it's just such an old myth that I'm going to kind of waste away, right? I'm just gonna
Mm,
disappear. And part of the willingness to become vegan, I think, is to take on some of this mythology. frankly, it's one of the things that held me back in the past of like, oh, I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to be complicated. I don't want to be controversial. And I'm just at a point in my life where I just don't care. I'm old enough where I'm not seeking a popularity kind of contest here. And I'm willing to talk about my decision, and I'm also realizing that I'm not going to convince some of the people in my life to or convert them, right? I think it's for me, it's just about living in alignment, providing a good role model for my kids, and allowing them in particular to choose kind of their own dietary patterns as they get older.
Mm.
But to understand kind of my thought process and my values clearly.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah, we could do a whole episode on that, I think. But kudos to you, kudos to everyone that sticks to their guts because that's what matters in the end, right? I mean, it's your health, and if we can inspire, that's awesome. And if people keep questioning it, then that's really their choice in the end. So, what do you think would you say are some of the requirements someone should bring when they want to work with us?
It's a good question. I think there's a few things. One is humility. I
Mhm.
think coming in with a sense of not knowing everything and being open to coaching, open to feedback, open to making mistakes. Oh my gosh, Fritz, I have made so many mistakes in the last year, just in terms of some of the way I was designing my fitness programming, how I was approaching things in the gym, food choices that I've made, how I've traveled, like a lot of mistakes, but it's been so fundamental. Again, back to that, like when you know better, you can do better idea. Like the willingness to be wrong, the willingness to not know, the willingness to fail, the willingness to be vulnerable, to ask for help, I think is so instrumental if you want to grow. If you want to stay the same, you don't have to seek coaching. You can stay defended or closed off or righteous, and that some people are really, that's just where they're at in their journey to feel very kind of closed off or right or assured. But I think to do this process effectively, coming in with an open heart, an open mind, a willingness to learn and be coached is essential. I also think realistically, you have to be willing to invest. You have to just be willing to invest time, money, some sacrifices, especially in the short term as you're learning and tinkering and establishing new habits and routines. I think you have to just be honest with yourself that you can't stay the same and change at the same time.
Wow. Some wise words to end the podcast. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Sam.
It's a pleasure. I love this journey. I love talking to other people who are also on a similar journey. And I just feel very grateful to you and your team for helping me kind of get through an area that was always just a bit complicated or convoluted in my mind. And happy to share my story, and I feel very grateful to you and your community for sharing their stories too. It's been really helpful for me.
Amazing. Yeah, it's beautiful that we've come full circle and that you're now on the podcast as well
Yeah.
forever, because I'm going to keep doing the podcast until I'm 100 years old.
Okay, but
Uh,
you have to put out another episode this week because I don't want to listen to myself in the sauna this week. I'm going to need new content.
Well, it is weird to listen to yourself on the podcast. That's true. I don't know if I finished the Simon Hill one myself. I'm not sure I even finished it. But actually, it's funny you say that. I recorded new episodes, so new episodes on the way, always, never stopping.
Thank
So thanks for
you.
hopping on. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your trust in us and your hard work. Obviously, we are the guiding mentors, but you are the one putting in the work, and I really want to acknowledge you for that. You're doing great things for yourself, for your family, and for your future. And yeah, one more year with us to make some more gains. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. Thank you, Fritz.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. And if you listen to this right now and you are inspired and want to make a change as well, then you can click the link in the description to book your free consultation. Where on a call we're going to really figure out where you're at right now, where you want to go, and how we can best help you to crush your goals on a plant-based diet. Or you can also go to talktofritz.com, um, a little website to book yourself a call with me or my team. Thanks so much for listening. Sam, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your time. And let's keep getting those V gains and save the planet. Talk soon.